There is someone watching this right now who has been crying in silence, not because something terrible happened, but because someone they loved is simply gone. And if this message finds you today, I want you to stay with me. And if this channel has ever meant something to you, consider subscribing, because what I'm about to share could change the way you see everything that's been happening in your life. You didn't expect this. That's the thing nobody talks about. You didn't expect to look up one day and realize that the person who used to be your everything, your best friend, your partner, your confidant, maybe even a family member, is no longer in your story. And it didn't happen with a dramatic fight or a big goodbye. It just faded. Calls got shorter, messages got slower, and then one morning, the silence became permanent. And you sat there, staring at your phone, wondering what you did wrong, wondering if you said too much, or maybe not enough, wondering if you should reach out one more time. And in that quiet, aching moment, a terrible thought crept in. Maybe I'm just not the kind of person people stay for. I need you to stop right there, because that thought, that lie, is exactly what the enemy wants you to believe in the gap between your last season and your next one. See, what nobody warned you about is this. Sometimes the most painful exits in your life are not punishments. Sometimes they are preparations. And the people who left, whether they walked away, drifted apart, or were taken from you, they may have been carrying assignments in your life that were only ever meant for a season. And when their season ended, God, in His mercy, in His wisdom, in His sovereign love, began removing them. Not to hurt you, but to make room. Think about that for a moment. Think about the last person who left your life. Really think about them. Think about how much you poured into that relationship. Think about the late nights, the sacrifices, the times you showed up for them when you had nothing left to give. Think about how you rearranged your life around their presence. And then think about this. Who were you becoming while you were focused on keeping them? Because sometimes the relationships we fight hardest to keep are the very ones quietly keeping us small. There was a woman, I'll call her Miriam, and she had a friendship that she would have bet her life on. 20 years. They had been through everything together. Job losses, broken marriages, sick children, funerals, celebrations. This was not a casual friendship. This was the kind of bond that people write songs about. And then, slowly, something changed. Every time Miriam stepped into something new, a new opportunity, a new faith walk, a new level of confidence, her friend found a way to dim it. Not always with words. Sometimes it was a look, a silence that lasted too long, a "that's nice" that carried no warmth, a subtle steering of conversations back to old wounds, old failures, old versions of Miriam that her friend seemed more comfortable with. Miriam spent 2 years trying to figure out what she was doing wrong. She prayed about it. She journaled about it. She blamed herself. She bent herself into impossible shapes, trying to preserve something that was slowly suffocating her. And then one day, without any argument, without any dramatic falling out, her friend simply stopped calling, and Miriam was devastated, absolutely broken. She fell to her knees and asked God, why? Why would you take the one person who knew me? And here's what came back to her, quiet and certain as a sunrise. I didn't take her. I released you from her. Let that sink in, because there is a difference, a profound, life-altering difference between being abandoned and being released. Abandonment says you weren't worth staying for. Release says you've outgrown where you were, and what was holding you there has served its purpose. And God, who sees the entire tapestry of your life when you can only see the thread you're currently standing on, sometimes has to remove what's familiar to make way for what's necessary. But here's what makes this so painfully hard. It's not always the toxic people who get removed. That's what surprises people. We expect God to remove the ones who hurt us, the ones who betrayed us, the ones who are obviously bad for us. And sometimes he does. But sometimes, and this is the part that breaks your heart wide open, he removes the good ones, the kind ones, the ones who loved you as well as they could, the ones who meant no harm. Because the issue was never about their character. It was about their capacity to carry you into your next chapter. Not everyone who loves you has been equipped to walk with you into your future. And that is not their fault, and it is not yours. It is simply the sacred mathematics of divine timing. I want you to sit with that truth for a second, because I know how much it hurts to accept that someone can love you and still not be meant for your next season. I know how much the mind wrestles with that, because love in the human understanding feels like it should be enough. It feels like if two people love each other, whether as friends, as partners, as family, that love should be able to overcome any distance, any difference, any direction. But God operates by purpose, not just by affection. And sometimes the most loving thing he can do is create a holy separation between you and someone who, with all the love in the world, has become an anchor on a soul that was built to fly. And maybe you're nodding right now because you know exactly what I'm talking about. Maybe there's someone in your life right now, or recently removed from it, and as painful as their absence has been, somewhere deep inside you, underneath the grief, you felt something unexpected. A little more air in your lungs, a little more clarity in your thoughts. Like a weight you didn't know you were carrying has quietly been lifted. And you feel guilty for that. You feel like you shouldn't feel lighter, like feeling any relief means you didn't love them enough. Let me tell you something, that relief is not guilt's business. That relief is your spirit recognizing freedom. That relief is your soul exhaling after years of contraction. That relief is God whispering, you don't have to carry that anymore. But the grief is real too. And I don't want to rush past it, because there is something deeply important about honoring the pain of these removals. There is something sacred in sitting with the loss before you move into the lesson. And I want to be careful not to speak about this in a way that makes it sound clean or simple or easy. Because it is not. When someone who was woven into the fabric of your daily life is suddenly absent, that absence has a texture. You feel it in the morning when you reach for your phone and remember there's no message waiting. You feel it on a hard day when you instinctively want to call them and then stop yourself. You feel it in the laughter when something funny happens and you look around for the one person who would have understood the joke, and they're not there. Grief doesn't ask for permission. It shows up in the grocery store when you walk past something they used to love. It shows up at 2 a.m. when the house is quiet and the memories are loud. It shows up in dreams where everything is still okay, and for a few beautiful seconds you forget, and then you wake up, and the remembering is its own kind of wound. I know that place. I know what it feels like to lose someone not to death, but to distance, to a growing apart that you couldn't stop no matter how hard you tried. And I want to say something to you that I wish someone had said to me when I was sitting in that grief. You are allowed to mourn what was real, even while you trust that what's coming is better. Those two things can exist together, the mourning and the trusting, the aching and the hoping, the tears on your pillow at night, and the quiet faith in your heart that God is working something out that your eyes cannot yet see. You don't have to choose between grieving and believing. You can do both. In fact, you must do both. Because the grief, when you walk through it honestly, becomes the very ground in which your new season takes root. Think about Job, not the end of his story, but the middle, the part we rush through to get to the restoration. Job, sitting in ashes, surrounded by loss so staggering it seems impossible. His children gone, his wealth gone, his health collapsing. And then his friends arrive, and at first, their presence is a comfort. They sit with him in silence for 7 days, and that silence is holy. But then they start talking, and with every word, they compound his pain. They explain his suffering in the language of his own failure. They present God as a scorekeeper, and Job as someone who has earned his losses. And Job, despite his anguish, knows that this isn't true. And yet he cannot silence their voices, because they are his closest companions. They are the ones he trusted. And God, in his wisdom, eventually removes them from that inner circle. He corrects them publicly. He vindicates Job before their very eyes. And then he restores Job, but not with the same community, with a new one, double of what he had before. But the people around him in his restoration are not the same people who sat in his ashes, whispering accusations. The community of his blessing was not the community of his suffering. And that is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. Because here is what I've come to understand. God doesn't just change your circumstances when he's promoting you. He changes your company. He changes who has access to you. He changes who is sitting at the table of your life. And sometimes that means clearing the table completely before he sets it again. If you are in that clearing right now, if your table feels empty, if your circle feels smaller than it's ever been, if you look around and wonder where everyone went, I want you to hear this with everything in you. An empty table is not a sign of rejection. An empty table is a sign of preparation. God is setting something. He is arranging something, and he cannot arrange it around the people who were never meant to be seated there permanently. There is a man I know, a real person, not a parable, who spent the better part of his 30s surrounded by people who celebrated his potential, but subtly competed with his progress. On the surface, everything looked like community. Cookouts, birthday parties, group chats that stayed active. But underneath it, there was a quiet poison that he couldn't name for a long time. Every time he moved forward, something in the room shifted. Invitations got sparse. The celebration of his wins was just a little too brief, just a little too hollow. And when he stumbled, the comfort came with just a little too much curiosity, just a little too much detail in the questions, just a little too much satisfaction hiding behind the concern. He didn't see it at first. We never do. Because when you love people, you extend grace in places where discernment should be extended instead. And it took a season of complete stripping, business failure, a health scare, a period of absolute humility and need, for him to see clearly who showed up and who showed out, who came closer and who disappeared, who spoke life and who went quiet. And when he finally came through that valley and stepped into the new season God had been building for him, the group was different. The inner circle was unrecognizable compared to before. And every single person standing with him in that new chapter had been placed there by God, not by circumstance, not by history, not by convenience, but by divine assignment. That's what God does. He curates. He doesn't just bless you, he carefully arranges the environment of your blessing, so that what he puts in your hands, the people around you can actually honor and protect. Because there's a version of favor that pours into a broken container and runs straight through it. And God doesn't waste his favor like that. When he's about to pour, he checks the vessel. He checks the surroundings. He prepares the ground. And sometimes, this is the part that takes the most faith to accept. He removes people who genuinely love you, because their love is not strong enough to survive your transformation. Not because their love is false, but because some people are so deeply attached to who you were that they cannot celebrate who you are becoming. They knew you before. They are comfortable with the before. They have built their version of you, their understanding of you, their relationship to you around that previous version. And when God starts changing you, really changing you, at the core, it makes them uncomfortable. It destabilizes something in them that they didn't know was dependent on your limitations. And rather than grow with you, they pull, they question, they cast subtle doubt on the new direction. They remind you of the old you, in moments when the new you is trying to emerge. And God, watching all of this, watching his child being pulled backward by the very hands of people who mean no harm, steps in, and he lovingly, firmly removes them, not as punishment for them, not as cruelty, but as protection for you. If you've felt that, if you've watched a relationship quietly dissolve in a season where you are finally beginning to grow, I want you to type something in the comments right now. Just one word. Just type Amen, because you are not alone in this. And that word is your declaration that you understand that even in the loss, God was in it. Even in the silence, he was speaking. Even in the distance, he was drawing you closer to where you were always supposed to be. Friends, I want to pause here for just a moment, and I want to be honest with you. This channel is not monetized. There are no ads, no income from YouTube. Every single video you watch here is made purely out of dedication and love, just for you. If this content has ever touched your heart, helped you through a hard night, spoken to something in you that needed to be spoken to, and if you feel moved to support this work, you can scan the QR code on screen right now, or click the link in the description below. Even the smallest contribution means the world, and helps keep this mission alive. Thank you so much, truly, from the bottom of my heart. Now let's keep going, because I feel like God has more for you in this message today. Because what I haven't told you yet is what comes after the removal. What happens in that strange, tender, disorienting season between who left and who's coming. That in-between space that nobody has a good name for. Some people call it the wilderness. Some call it the desert. Some call it the waiting room. And whatever you call it, you know the feeling. It is the feeling of standing in the middle of a story that hasn't resolved yet. It's the feeling of being between chapters. The old one has closed, but the new one hasn't begun. And in that gap, in that silence, in that empty space that used to be filled with noise and people and motion, something remarkable begins to happen. You begin to hear yourself again. Do you know how long it had been since you could hear yourself? How long it had been since your own thoughts weren't drowned out by the needs, opinions, expectations, and voices of everyone around you. The wilderness is lonely. I will not pretend it isn't, but it is also sacred, because in the wilderness, there is no one to perform for. There is no identity to maintain for someone else's comfort. There is no version of yourself to uphold, no role to play, no dynamic to manage. There is just you and God and the quiet. And that quiet, as unbearable as it can feel, is the very place where your truest self begins to emerge. Think about Moses in the desert. 40 years. 40 years of obscurity after a life that had been destined for greatness from birth. 40 years where the only company was sheep and silence and the slow erosion of the man he used to think he was. The Prince of Egypt, reduced to a shepherd in Midian. Can you imagine the identity crisis of that? Can you imagine the questions that must have sat with him in those years? Was I wrong about everything? Did I misread my own calling? Is this it? Is this where my story ends? In this desert, with these animals, in this forgotten corner of the world? But here's what those 40 years were doing that Moses could not see. They were building in him something that the palace never could. They were forging humility into the bones of a man who had grown up with power. They were stripping away every vestige of self-sufficiency, every last thread of confidence in his own ability, until what remained was a man so emptied of himself that God could fill him completely. And it was in that emptied state, humble, uncertain, even reluctant, that God appeared to him in the burning bush. Not in the palace, not in his years of privilege, not in the proximity to Pharaoh, in the desert, in the wilderness, in the very place Moses thought God had forgotten him. And what did God say to him there? He said, "I have heard the cry of my people. I have seen their suffering. I know their pain. And I am sending you." Not someone else. Not someone more qualified, more confident, more articulate. You, the broken one, the one who ran, the one who failed, the one who spent 40 years in the wilderness wondering if he'd been abandoned. You are the one I've been preparing for this moment. And I need you to feel that. I need that to land in whatever place in your heart has been asking, has God forgotten me? Because the answer is the same now as it was for Moses in the desert. He has not forgotten you. He has been preparing you. And the very things you thought disqualified you, the losses, the removals, the years of silence, the seasons that looked like failure, those are not disqualifications. Those are credentials. Those are the marks of someone whose character has been tested, whose faith has been refined, whose identity has been forged in a fire that most people never survive. Now, let me ask you something. And I want you to be honest, not with me, but with yourself. Is there someone whose absence you've been trying to reverse? Someone you've been texting when they've gone quiet? Someone you've been showing up for who has stopped showing up for you? Someone whose approval you've been working overtime to earn back? And every time you reach and don't receive, every time you show up and they don't meet you, something inside you deflates a little more. I want to speak very gently to that part of you right now. That part that keeps reaching. That part that interprets their distance as evidence of your inadequacy. That part that cannot rest until the relationship is restored, the tension is resolved, the silence is broken. I want to say something to that part of you, and I want you to really hear it. Not every closed door is waiting for you to knock again. Some closed doors are closed by God, and He does not close them to punish you. He closes them to redirect you. And when you keep knocking on a door that God has shut, you are not standing in faith, you are standing in fear. Fear that you are not enough. Fear that without that person's presence in your life, something essential about you is missing. Fear that the love God has for you is somehow insufficient without being confirmed by their presence. But hear this. Hear this with everything you have. Your worth is not housed in any human being's willingness to stay. Your value is not contingent on who chooses to remain in your circle. Your future is not dependent on anyone who has been removed endorsing the next version of your life. You were whole before them, and you are whole, being made whole after them. There's a young woman I want to tell you about. She was 26, and she had built her entire sense of self around a relationship. Not in the reckless, visible way. She was functional. She had a career, she had friends. But underneath all of that, at the very core of her identity, was this one relationship. And when it ended, suddenly, brutally, without warning, it didn't just feel like losing a person, like she reached inside to find who she was and came up with nothing but his name. And for months, she was in free fall. She did what most of us do when we can't stand the silence. She filled it. New people, new distractions, new ways to avoid sitting in the stillness that his absence had created. Because in the stillness, she would have to face the question she was most terrified of. It took a night, a single night, of sitting completely alone. No distractions, no noise, no escape. Just her and God and the walls of her apartment for the question to surface fully. And in that vulnerable, stripped-down, terrified moment, she asked it out loud, just spoke it into the room. Who am I, God? Because I don't know anymore. I've been so long trying to be what someone else needed that I don't know what I actually am. And what happened next, she told me later, was the most unexpected thing. It wasn't a vision, or a voice, or a dramatic supernatural experience. It was simply this, a deep, settling peace that moved through her like water. Quiet, warm, sure. And in that peace, a single thought that felt too clear to be her own. I've been waiting for this question. I've been waiting for you to want to know. She spent the next year in one of the most profound seasons of self-discovery she had ever experienced. She rediscovered passions that the relationship had slowly crowded out. She found her voice in ways that the constant need to accommodate someone else had silenced. She healed wounds she'd been using the relationship to paper over. And 18 months later, she met someone entirely different from anyone she had ever been drawn to before. Someone who didn't need her to be small. Someone who didn't feel threatened by her growth. Someone whose presence expanded her rather than contracted her. And she told me, "I used to think the worst thing that ever happened to me was losing him. Now I understand it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because losing him made me find myself. And finding myself is what made me ready for what came next." That's the geometry of divine removal. It looks like subtraction on the surface. It feels like loss at the point of impact. But underneath, invisibly, something is being added. Something is being built. A foundation of self-knowledge, of surrender, of genuine faith. Not the kind of faith that's easy when everything is going well, but the kind that survives the dark, the kind that holds on when it cannot see. The kind that says, "I don't understand this, but I trust the one who is writing it." And I want to talk about that kind of faith for a moment, because I think it gets misrepresented. I think we sometimes portray faith as this triumphant, joyful, confident thing, hands raised, eyes bright, voice sure. And faith can look like that. But the deepest faith I have ever witnessed, and the deepest I have ever experienced, looks quieter than that. It looks like lying on the floor at midnight, eyes red, heart shattered, and still, refusing to say that God has abandoned you. It looks like getting up the next morning, even though nothing has changed, and choosing to believe that the same God who started this story is still writing it. It looks like finding one reason to be grateful on a day when everything feels like a reason to despair. That is not weakness. That is warfare. That is the most powerful spiritual act a human being can perform. To choose trust in the middle of confusion. To choose hope in the center of loss. To choose forward when everything in you wants to crawl back. And here's something nobody talks about enough. That kind of faith changes you. Not just spiritually, it changes you in the bones. It creates in you a resilience that cannot be manufactured any other way. You cannot shortcut your way to that depth. You cannot study your way to it. You cannot attend enough conferences or listen to enough messages to acquire it. It can only be forged in the furnace of real, lived, unresolved pain that you chose to walk through with God instead of without Him. And the people who have been through that, you can tell. There is something in them that the comfortable ones don't have. There is a quietness in their confidence, a gentleness in their strength, a knowing in their eyes. Because they have been somewhere most people have not. They have touched the bottom. They have sat in the dark. They have watched everything fall apart. And they have come through the other side not because they were stronger, or wiser, or more spiritual, but because they held on to the only thing that cannot be removed: the love of God, the faithfulness of God, the sovereign, unbreakable, relentlessly patient presence of God. And that presence, that is what is carrying you right now. Even if you cannot feel it, even if this season has felt so silent that you've questioned whether you ever felt it at all, He is there. He was there when that relationship ended. He was there when the phone stopped ringing. He was there when the room felt empty and the table felt cleared and the future felt uncertain. He was in every moment of it, not watching from a distance, arms folded, waiting for you to pass the test, but present, intimate, close, working in the spaces between your pain, building something in the architecture of your life that required the removal of what was there before. Think about a sculptor. A great sculptor does not add marble to make the masterpiece. They remove it. Every blow of the chisel, every stroke that takes something away, that is not destruction. That is revelation. The masterpiece was always there, inside the stone. The sculptor is simply removing what was covering it. And the process looks violent. It looks destructive. It looks like loss. Pieces of stone falling away, the original shape disappearing, the familiar form being undone. But the sculptor knows what they are doing. The sculptor sees what the stone cannot see. And every removal is precise, intentional, in service of the image that was always meant to emerge. You are that stone, and God is that sculptor. And the people He has removed from your life, even the ones you loved most, even the ones you never wanted to lose, they were pieces of marble that were covering the masterpiece. And their removal, as painful as it was the chisel of a sculptor who sees you more clearly than anyone who has ever tried to hold on to you. And there is a masterpiece emerging. I need you to believe that. Not because the evidence is obvious right now, not because everything is suddenly making sense, but because the God who started this work in you is faithful to complete it. Because the same love that brought you this far is the same love that will carry you through what comes next. Because you were not made for the last chapter. You were made for this one. The one that's being written right now. The one that required everything from you before it could give everything back. Let me tell you about a man named David. Not the triumphant king with the crown and the palace. The earlier David. The one running through the wilderness with Saul's army behind him. The one hiding in caves, eating crumbs, watching his closest companions one by one face choices about whose side they were on. The one who had been anointed king, literally touched by God's prophet, literally chosen by God, and yet whose life looked nothing like a king's. Whose daily reality was fear and cold and uncertainty and the absence of the community and comfort he once had. That is not weakness. That is warfare. That is the most powerful spiritual act a human being can perform. To choose trust in the middle of confusion. To choose hope in the center of loss. To choose forward when everything in you wants to crawl back. And here's something nobody talks about enough. That kind of faith changes you. Not just spiritually, it changes you in the bones. It creates in you a resilience that cannot be manufactured any other way. You cannot shortcut your way to that depth. You cannot study your way to it. You cannot attend enough conferences or listen to enough messages to acquire it. It can only be forged in the furnace of real, lived, unresolved pain that you chose to walk through with God instead of without Him. And the people who have been through that, you can tell. There is something in them that the comfortable ones don't have. There is a quietness in their confidence, a gentleness in their strength, a knowing in their eyes. Because they have been somewhere most people have not. They have touched the bottom. They have sat in the dark. They have watched everything fall apart. And they have come through the other side, not because they were stronger, or wiser, or more spiritual, but because they held on to the only thing that cannot be removed. The love of God, the faithfulness of God, the sovereign, unbreakable, relentlessly patient presence of God. And that presence, that is what is carrying you right now, even if you cannot feel it. Even if this season has felt so silent that you've questioned whether you ever felt it at all. He is there. He was there when that relationship ended. He was there when the phone stopped ringing. He was there when the room felt empty and the table felt cleared and the future felt uncertain. He was in every moment of it, not watching from a distance, arms folded, waiting for you to pass the test, but present, intimate, close, working in the spaces between your pain, building something in the architecture of your life that required the removal of what was there before. Think about a sculptor. A great sculptor does not add marble to make the masterpiece. They remove it. Every blow of the chisel, every stroke that takes something away, that is not destruction. That is revelation. The masterpiece was always there, inside the stone. The sculptor is simply removing what was covering it. And the process looks violent. It looks destructive. It looks like loss. Pieces of stone falling away, the original shape disappearing, the familiar form being undone. But the sculptor knows what they are doing. The sculptor sees what the stone cannot see. And every removal is precise, intentional, in service of the image that was always meant to emerge. You are that stone, and God is that sculptor. And the people He has removed from your life, even the ones you loved most, even the ones you never wanted to lose, they were pieces of marble that were covering the masterpiece. And their removal, as painful as it was the chisel of a sculptor who sees you more clearly than anyone who has ever tried to hold on to you. And there is a masterpiece emerging. I need you to believe that, not because the evidence is obvious right now, not because everything is suddenly making sense, but because the God who started this work in you is faithful to complete it. Because the same love that brought you this far is the same love that will carry you through what comes next. Because you were not made for the last chapter, you were made for this one, the one that's being written right now, the one that required everything from you before it could give everything back. Let me tell you about a man named David, not the triumphant king with the crown in the palace, the earlier David, the one running through the wilderness with Saul's army behind him, the one hiding in caves, eating crumbs, watching his closest companions one by one face choices about whose side they were on, the one who had been anointed king, literally touched by God's prophet, literally chosen by God, and yet whose life looked nothing like a king's, whose daily reality was fear and cold and uncertainty and the absence of the community and comfort he once had. And in those years, those brutal, character-forging, faith-testing years in the wilderness, David did something that most people under that kind of pressure forget to do. He worshipped. In the caves, in the cold, in the confusion, in the absence of all the things that would have made worship feel natural or easy or warranted, he worshipped. He wrote songs to God in the very darkest moments of his story. And those songs, the Psalms, have become the most widely read, most deeply comforting spiritual literature in all of human history. Written not from the palace, but from the cave. Written not in triumph, but in trial. And what David could not have known as he sat in those caves, composing those raw and vulnerable and desperate prayers, was that he was creating something that would speak to millions of people across thousands of years. That his pain was producing something beyond himself. That the very wilderness God was walking him through was the very place his greatest contribution to the world was being born. And I want to ask you, what if the same is true for you? What if the season you are in right now, as empty and as painful as it has felt, is the season in which your greatest contribution is being forged? What if the very grief that has reduced you to tears in the night is the same grief that will one day give you the words to lift someone else out of their darkness? What if the people God removed created a silence in which He is speaking something to you, not just for you, but through you, to a world that needs exactly what you will carry when you come through this? Because that is how God works. He wastes nothing. Not one tear, not one night, not one loss, not one silence, not one empty seat at the table. Every single thing, every removal, every pruning, every stripping away is being woven into a story that is far bigger than any one chapter of it. And the chapter you are in right now, the one that feels like the worst one, the one that you would skip if you could, this chapter is not the end. It is not even close to the end. It is the chapter just before the turning. And you know what the turning feels like when it starts? It doesn't feel dramatic. It doesn't arrive with trumpets. It starts small. It starts with a morning where, for the first time in a long time, you wake up and feel something you can only describe as possibility. It starts with a conversation with someone new who speaks to something in you that you thought had gone quiet. It starts with an opportunity appearing in a direction you never expected, from a door you didn't even know you had knocked on. It starts with a quiet moment of prayer that, for the first time in months, doesn't feel like talking to a ceiling. It feels like being heard. And in those small, gentle, almost imperceptible moments, Something in your spirit recognizes, this is it. This is the beginning of the new season. This is what all of that was for. This is why the table was cleared. This is why those doors closed. This is why those people left. Not because something was wrong with you, but because something is right about where you're going. And God, in His perfect wisdom, was simply clearing a path to it. The favor that is coming for you is not like the favor you've known before. It's not a small upgrade. It's not a slight improvement on what you had. It is a new order of things, a new level of alignment between who you are and where you are and what you're doing. A new circle of people who are specifically, divinely appointed to walk with you in this next chapter. People whose gifts complement yours, whose faith strengthens yours, whose presence calls out things in you that have never yet been called. A new capacity for joy that is not dependent on circumstances because it has been built on something unshakable. A new relationship to yourself, knowing yourself more fully, trusting yourself more deeply, loving yourself more truly than you ever did when you needed other people's validation to feel whole. This is what was on the other side of the removal. This is what God was building while you were grieving. This is the season He was preparing while you were sitting in confusion, wondering what went wrong. And maybe you're sitting with that right now. That tender, cautious, could it be true feeling. That fragile hope that doesn't quite dare to believe yet. That part of you that has been disappointed before and doesn't want to reach too far in case it gets pulled back. I know that place. That careful, wounded hoping. That faith that has seen enough heartbreak to approach the future with both open hands and a guarded heart. And I want to say, that carefulness is not a lack of faith. That is wisdom wearing the clothes of experience, and God honors that. He doesn't ask you to be reckless in your hope. He doesn't ask you to leap before you've had time to heal. He is patient. He is gentle with the process of your restoration. He knows exactly how much of your trust was broken and how carefully it needs to be rebuilt. And He does not rush that. He is not in a hurry, because the favor He's bringing you into is not a sprint, it's a life. And He's building it for the long run. So, if you're still in the middle of it, still in the grief, still in the waiting, still in the season that hasn't broken open yet, I want to leave you with something to carry. Not a formula, not a 5-step plan, just a truth that I have seen hold people through the very darkest nights of their lives. God never removes without replacing. He never closes without opening. He never strips without restoring. He never allows a loss in your life without having already prepared what the loss is making room for. The question is not whether the new thing is coming. The question is only whether you will trust Him long enough to see it. Whether you will resist the temptation to go back and reclaim what He removed. Whether you will choose, one more time, one more morning, one more moment, to believe that the God who sees you, knows you, loves you with a love that preceded your existence and will outlast your understanding, that God is not finished with your story. He is not finished, not even close. The best of what He has for you is not behind you. It is not in the people who left, the seasons that ended, the doors that closed. It is not in the version of your life that looked more full but felt more empty. The best of what God has for you is ahead. It is in the new chapter, the new circle, the new morning that is already being prepared. And there is someone, maybe a person you haven't met yet, maybe a friendship that is weeks away from beginning, maybe an opportunity that is forming right now in a place you cannot see, who has been specifically placed by God in the coordinates of your future. Someone who will understand you in a way that the people who left never could. Someone whose presence in your life will make you look back at every single removal and say, now I see it. Now I understand what you were doing. And in that moment, the grief will be transformed. Not erased, transformed. It will become gratitude. And that gratitude will become testimony. And that testimony will become the thing that reaches into someone else's darkness and pulls them toward the light. Because that is what God does with the broken pieces. He doesn't just restore what was lost. He takes the broken pieces and builds something new out of them. something that could not have existed without the breaking, something that carries the beauty of what survived, and the wisdom of what was learned, and the depth of what was endured, something that is uniquely, specifically, irreplaceably yours, and it is being built right now. Even in the silence, even in the waiting, even in the season that feels like nothing is happening. Behind the scenes, in the invisible architecture of God's faithfulness, something is being constructed that will take your breath away when it finally becomes visible. And you are almost there. You are closer than you think. The dawn always feels most distant in those final hours before the sky begins to change. But the change is coming. The light is coming. The new season is coming. And when it arrives, and it will arrive, you will understand, with a clarity that could only come from having survived the dark, why God had to remove what He removed, why He had to clear what He cleared, why He had to create in your life the very spaces that hurt the most. Because those spaces were not empty. They were never empty. They were full of God, full of preparation, full of becoming, full of the sacred, invisible, patient work of a Father who loves you too much to leave you where you were, and too intentional to let go of where you're going. And He is not done. He is not done with you. He is not done with this story. He is not done with this season. There is still more to be built, more to be revealed, more to be restored, more to be given back in abundance beyond what you thought you lost. Keep going. Keep trusting. Keep showing up. Keep choosing faith over fear, hope over despair, forward over backward, because your new season of favor is not just a destination. It is a process. It is a daily unfolding. It is the accumulation of every morning you chose to believe when believing was hard. Every night you prayed when praying felt useless. Every day you kept going when going felt pointless. Every small act of faithfulness in the wilderness that nobody saw but God, and He saw all of it. Every single one. And He is counting it. He is honoring it. And in the fullness of His perfect timing, not a moment early, not a moment late, He will open something that makes the whole journey make sense. He will place someone in your life who will illuminate why everyone else had to leave. He will bring an opportunity that could only have reached you through this exact path of loss and stripping and rebuilding. He will give you something that your old circle could never have held, your old environment could never have sustained, your old self could never have received. But the you that has come through this, the you that is being formed in this season, the you that is emerging from the wilderness with fire in your spirit and peace in your bones, that you is ready. That you has been built for exactly this. And God, who has been faithful every single step of the way, even the steps you couldn't see His footprints on, that God is about to do something in your life that will make you stand in awe. Not just gratitude, awe. The kind that takes your breath, the kind that drops you to your knees, the kind that makes you look back at the pain and say through tears that are finally joy instead of grief, you knew, you always knew, and you never stopped working. And I am so grateful, so profoundly, completely, overwhelmingly grateful that you loved me too much to leave me where I was. Hold on, because what God is bringing you into is worth every step it took to get there. And you haven't seen anything yet.
My child, before you go, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, turn on the bell icon, and comment if you believe I am guiding your life. May blessings follow you today.